So, in the last session, we talked a little bit about one of the people, one of the Enlightenment thinkers, who tried to discuss and understand the concept of humans in a state of nature, and that was Thomas Hobbes. And Hobbes gives kind of a bleak understanding, but also creates the concept of a social contract. This time around, we're going to look at another individual, probably the most significant individual for the United States of America, and that's a guy by the name of John Locke. John Locke's another English philosopher during the Enlightenment, and he is the guy who is taken from the most in Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. So I like this quote here, which is, "All mankind being all equal and independent, no one ought to harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions." This actually is where you get the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness from. So let's look at what John Locke has to say. There's a couple of things. John Locke, like Hobbes, is going to think about humans in a state of nature. And John Locke is also going to say that human beings are generally self-interested. But he doesn't talk about self-interest in the same way that Hobbes does, where life would be short, brutish, and disgusting. What he says is human beings, in order give up some of that freedom in that ultimate state of nature so that they can create a society that defends property. What he means by this is, if I can have property rights, then what I can do is I can protect what is mine, being my health, my body, and then my possessions, and be able to then work with other people in a state of safety. So he believes that human beings create a social contract to be able to defend these rights. Now, unlike Hobbes, he believes these rights are inalienable rights. In other words, they're given by God and they are natural. These rights of liberty, of life, of possession, of property, and he goes through a whole list of what property means, are the way the world should work. Now, what's interesting here is he says that since these rights are natural, the sovereign, the leader, must defend those rights. And that if they do not defend those rights, they are a tyrant. Even a good tyrant, then in this case, is still a tyrant. Which means if I take your rights away from you to give you more, I'm still a tyrant. Now, he doesn't believe that, the role of the government is to make people completely free against one another, because that's not the point of society. Society is to create an ability to feel safe, to be able to engage with one another. So, for John Locke, it is these inalienable rights that must be protected. Why is that significant? Well, one of the major reasons why that is significant is that he states that if those rights are violated, people have the right to rebel against the system. He condones protest and rebellion as long as they fit within the idea of indivisible rights. This, for America, is the philosophical foundation for leaving England. It doesn't have to do with massive harm, but it kind of philosophical harm in some ways. Now, there is harm, there's problems back and forth, and if you've taken US 1, you know that. But the philosophical reasoning behind it is that King George is a tyrant because he's taken away fundamental rights, inalienable rights. And because he's done that, he's gone against nature. And since he's gone against nature, he should be overthrown. The second really important thing we get from John Locke is something called tabula rasa, which you'll probably memorize and know that it means blank slate. Now, why is that important? Well, for Locke, understanding of the world for every human being was based solely on experience. There is no inherent knowledge, in his opinion. In other words, these ideas that we think are very complex and very abstract actually are just built upon experiences to create more complex experiences. He doesn't go against the idea of deep thought or reasoning. He's a huge proponent of this. But what he does go against is that people are not born with any understanding of the world. In this way, tabula rasa means all people are created equal. They are created with inalienable rights, and they are created with no experience, which means they don't know anything. That is extraordinarily important. See, for Locke, how you understand the world is like a little kid. If you ever watched a little kid start to understand the world, you'll get this. A little kid sitting in his bed realizes that there is a fuzzy thing at the foot of his bed. He knows that fuzzy thing is black with a snout and 4 legs, and he starts to decipher that that fuzzy thing is a dog. Later on, he goes to the zoo and he calls a deer a dog. Or he'll call a zebra a dog, and you have to correct him and say, no, that's a zebra. Then he goes and sees a zebra, and he goes, he's like, that's a zebra. You say good. And then he goes and he sees a horse, and he goes, zebra, and you go, no, because he's building on experience. What's more important about this is that if you follow this train of logic, if all people are created equal because there's no inherent knowledge, it also means that nobody is born to rule. And that means that we should have a meritocracy and not a born nobility. And that is what makes him revolutionary. The belief that you can rebel and the belief that you should have a meritocracy.